Give us the quick intro. Talk to us a bit about who you are, what your job is, and the work that you're doing at Entrepreneur First.
For sure. So I'm Jonny. I'm one of the partners at EF, and I run the London office. EF is a talent investor. What that means is that we invest first in people before they have a team or an idea, and help them to find both those things. So we run programs every couple of months in London, in Paris, in Bangalore, and also in the US now, where we take a critical mass of people that we think could start a company, but are pre-team and pre-idea, and we give them a small amount of funding and a bunch of hands-on support to find the right co-founder, the right idea. And at the end of that process, we fund the newly formed companies that we think have potential to be great.
And what are you looking for in those people to join the programs?
Yeah, so we kind of break it down into four key criteria. Ultimately, we want to back people that we believe are very driven, highly ambitious, and people that are very smart, not necessarily academically have all the badges, but just clearly have been smart problem solvers throughout their lives, and people with the right type of skills required to either be the CEO or CTO of a company. Now, often we're backing people who are very, very early stage. A bunch of the people that we will take are straight out of university, because they haven't necessarily started companies before, but they've demonstrated a bunch of these criteria in just other things that they've done in their lives so far.
And I think, if correct me if I'm wrong, but you look specifically for the CEO archetype and the CTO archetype. Is that right? So you're looking at people who are either commercial or technical. Is that right?
Well, we actually predominantly take technical people. I think that probably about 80-90% of the people that we take can code, and it's a minority of people that can't, and most people who are non-technical have probably either studied some kind of STEM degree or worked alongside technologists very closely before. I think we do try and identify ahead of time whether we think someone will be a CEO or a CTO, but we're often surprised by this as well. And probably disproportionately, a lot of our best CEOs have been people that we maybe thought would have been CTOs at the start of the program.
And how does that kind of team forming process work? We had David from Asteroid, who obviously went through Entrepreneur First and YC. He talked about some of the drama and the gossip that sometimes happens with team breakups and forming. What kind of role does EF or program managers take in trying to bring teams together and helping them separate? What's that like?
Yeah, I often say that I think the outside-in view is that we're matchmakers at EF, and we're not at all. I think we're more like divorce counselors. Really the biggest thing we do to do effective team building is in the construction of the cohorts, right? So have you selected just a lot of high quality people? Are there enough of those people? Is the composition of people correct, such that there's every single person has multiple different people that they could potentially try something out with? And then the second biggest thing after that is just creating the kind of the right norms and environment to enable team building. So to begin with, one of the norms is just try fast and fail fast. So we tell everyone to try and be in their first team by the end of the first week of the program, but also expect that most of those teams will last for 48 hours max, right? I think my favorite stat of EFs is that 95% of people that do an EF program will have tried out a team by the end of the first week, and 80% of those teams will break up at some point in the program.
Wow.
And so one of the things we figured out early on is that you need to celebrate breakups. Breakups need to be a good and normal thing because everyone's trying to figure this out for the first time. You're in a room full of people who were ostensibly like strangers like a couple of weeks prior, and you're trying to find like who is the right person for me to work with in this room. So we celebrate breakups by like when a team is formed, there's like a notification gets pinged into the like shared Slack that says, hey, this team is now formed and they're working on something together. And then when they break up, another notification goes into Slack and it says this team is now broken up, this is now available. But like actually both notifications get the same kind of like number of reactions and celebrations and emojis around it. And if you and when you break up, you're encouraged to like write a breakup message about like why it didn't work out between the two of you. It's not like, hey, this fundamentally this person's just a terrible person. It's just they weren't the right person.
Have you ever had a post like that when they're just sort of slating the other person?
Look, I mean, like we've done this a number of times. Lots of stuff has happened, but I think like 99% of the time, these are all just like very positive messages about like, hey, this is why this person's great, and it just hasn't worked out for the two of us, right? And that breakup might happen after 24 hours. It might happen after a couple of weeks. You enter this kind of like weird alternative universe where like a team that has worked together for 2 weeks is like a really old and stable and like strong team. But yeah, these breakups will happen at some point. But I think that's what makes the teams more robust over time is that they've practiced like they've tried it out, right, with a bunch of different people before making the right decision.
Yeah, definitely. And then what does the end of the program look like?
So like for the most part, right, like we are like relatively hands off, right? Like now we work in the same office as the people that do the program. And we probably chat to you every single day that you're doing it. But like for the most part, you're just like building a company. And so like what the program looks like at the start is like the first couple like weeks are a lot of like intense like teams forming, teams breaking up, and then that like like peters out over time. And usually after the first 2 months, that's kind of like almost like the teams are stable. And then after the 3 month point, we make our investment decisions of like, cool, we've observed you all for the last like 3 months, and like which of these teams do we think is particularly exciting? And then we decide to invest. But then the idea is like, what does the program look like then? Well, you're still building a company, right? Ultimately, it's not like school or anything. We're not like trying to be super structured. You should be building a company. I guess the big thing is that we take our companies out to San Francisco, and that's a thing which we've changed in the last 18 months. And so now every team that forms through EF every company that we invest in through EF now will go and spend 3 months in San Francisco straight away after that investment.
And how many stay in SF, just quickly?
I mean, like, I don't think we've got like really great data on this yet because we did this for the first time 18 months ago. Yeah, and like visas are tricky for a bunch of reasons, and they've got trickier for some reason since January. I can't put my finger on what that is. But a bunch are staying and a bunch are coming back, right? I think like we encourage people to like build the company in the best place for them to build the company, right? I think what our kind of like view on this is like what we want to try and do is just like change the culture around how people think about like what is possible to do with their lives at a very early point in their career, right? Like I think like you go to the universities here in the UK and most people are not thinking about starting a company when they graduate. Why is that? It's because everyone who is like a year ahead of them or 2 years ahead of them didn't start a company, right? They went and worked in consulting or in a hedge fund or in a big tech company. And we think the only way you change that is by like creating these global winners. And if you want to create global winners, well, you need to compete on a global stage. And that's why we help like take people to San Francisco straight away, is because like that is where the global stage is, right? Like if you want to try and like outcompete and win on a global level, well, then you need to see what like the very best looks like from a very early stage. And so kind of like our view is like build the company in wherever is the right place to build it. Because if you do that, you're far more likely to just like win And if you win, that's how we like create a positive flywheel where more and more people will like start building great companies early on in their careers here in the UK.
And what was the reaction to that like when you made that decision or transition to push everyone to San Francisco?
I mean, from like the founder perspective, like overwhelmingly positive. I think like the one of the reasons we did it was that it was probably the most frequently asked question from our founders after leaving EF was like, how do we like what's the best way to get out to San Francisco? And I think the reason that people came to us was because we were probably the one investor on their cap table that had a lot of like deep Silicon Valley connections because we've raised money from Reid Hoffman and the Collison brothers and Founders Fund and Greylock, and like so people would come to us and say like, how do you do it? And we kind of realized you just got to like, we've got to probably be the bridge for them to get out there. And so like when we announced it, it was overwhelmingly positive, and I think it continues to be like one of the most like cited things about like why people continue to apply to EF. So I think it was like ultimately the right decision.
Yeah, amazing. It makes a lot of sense. Our view has always been you've got to go where the money is. And San Francisco is where the money is. You know, it's where the buyers are. It's where all the big VCs are. You know, if you want to make it, you've got to sell to the US market, and it seems like people are doing it earlier and earlier.
A question on like a question on the cohorts. I just wanted to ask like, I'm trying to work out if the cohorts, maybe like these aren't previous founders, these are sort of younger people coming into EF and they're kind of just getting started in this world. They may not be sort of biasly led to the kind of trends that we see in VC, whether it's like everyone's doing like, you know, for a time it was like B2B AI, then it was consumer AI, then it's hardware, or then it's defense tech. They'd probably have like a blank slate in their mind when they're coming in. They want to just build something cool. They're not sort of infected by that. Infected is a bad word, but they're not sort of biased towards those trends. Are you seeing like the cohorts follow the same sort of like hype waves, if you will, or is it just a completely green field of new ideas?
I think that you can always observe in a cohort like what is the current hot thing. Like it tends to, it's not everyone, but like I don't think it's like inescapable. I'm not going to pretend like, oh yeah, like EF just like insulates itself from any kind of like what is the current thing. You can observe it where like, hey, a couple of years back, like suddenly everyone wanted to do a crypto company, and like in the last 6 months, I've probably heard the word roll-ups more than at any point in my life, right? Like, so you know, it's not we're not insulated from that. But I think that the nice thing is like the way that we encourage ideation is by like getting people to think about like what are the things that they are like uniquely well placed to work on. And so if you are a like you know someone who has worked for a long time in say I don't know, like in fintech or in AI or in healthcare, right? Like, don't go and just like do the new hot thing, but instead try and think about like what are you well placed to build. And so like, I think you do a lot of like organic ideation based off like the founders' backgrounds and kind of how they intersect with each other as well. I think like some of the most interesting ideas that we see come from like this like combinatorial thing where you take two people who otherwise maybe wouldn't have met, and then they end up working on something which I don't think either of them alone would have come up with.
And has the kind of a new wave of AI companies and I don't know, the technical talent required to build meaningful AI companies, has that changed the way that you're looking at people you let into the cohort?
It hasn't changed massively how we think about this. I mean, like we were fortunate enough to be investors in bunch of these like applied AI companies in the last time that AI was really hot. And I remember when I started working at EF in 2016, the kind of like joke behind the scenes at demo day was just that like every company was like .ai and was like AI for X. So I think that like what hasn't changed is that we continue to look for like very strong technologists who have demonstrated like strong bias to action in their like desire to just kind of like do things and build things, right? Like now I do think that like what is great about like you know, like coding assistants or like tools that enable like anyone to just like build anything from scratch is that they allow people on the programs to be like much more productive than I think they would have been previously. Like what I observe is that like companies are now faster to like build real product, faster to get to revenue than ever before. But I don't think it's like shaped much like who we take onto the program.
I was going to ask, so we had Kitty Mayo, CEO of Project Europe on,
Yeah.
and she was saying that a lot of their applications have been, you know, they've had thousands of applications. A lot of them have been from companies or founders that have built companies that are essentially ChatGPT wrappers in a specific niche. They know, and our generation or their generation knows how to go viral, and they're creating a very, very profitable company. And that's not, you know, it's not maybe the venture model. How are you guys navigating that in terms of, you know, the founders are maybe building essentially a very profitable company or potentially a profitable company, but not necessarily one that is a VC backable kind of company? Because they're two different things, really.
Yeah, they are. I think there are some great businesses that you can now build that just like
the opportunity has never been larger, right?
They shouldn't try and get venture funding, right? But like we are very, very deliberately not trying to build those types of companies, and we are explicit with that with the founders from day one, right? Like I think that, you know, one of the, you know, in the very kind of like opening talk that I usually give to a cohort is like, kind of, it's as hard to build something like big as it is to build something like truly enormous. And like, actually, in some ways, it's easier to build something truly enormous because all of the resources that you need in the world are attracted to ambition, right? Like, if you believe that the you know, like capital is attracted to ambition, talent is attracted to ambition, like even customers are attracted to ambition, right? Like, and so we're quite like just explicitly not trying to build like good busineses, right? Like, I mean, that sounds like you probably don't want to like clip that part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love good businesses, but like, but no, we want to build like big venture scale businesses. We want to build businesses that get very, very big, very, very quickly. And we work with the founders for 3 months on these ideas. It's like, I think one of the biggest things that we do to like help people shape their ideas is try and like help them think like 1, 2, 3 orders of magnitude bigger about what they could build. I mean, like Charlie Songhurst, who's on EF's board and also on Meta's board, and just like, you know, has spoken to our cohorts and spoken to like the EF team a bunch about this. And he's like, probably like the biggest returns he finds from advice that he gives is just like telling Europeans to like think 10, 100,000 times bigger. And I think this is true.
Yeah, it's we hear it so much, and that's, you know, when we speak to Kitty, that's what she was saying that they're trying to do is like inspire not just the generation of founders but also parents, academics, to be able to think bigger, to do bigger, and to like take the big risks and yeah, to give the big swings a go. What was it like working with Kitty? Did you have much overlap with her?
Yes, I mean Kitty used to report directly into me. She's fantastic, and I was absolutely thrilled when she got the position with Harry, and I think what they're doing there is great as well. But yeah, I worked with Kitty basically like side by side for 6 years, so
cool.
she's a very good friend of mine. So
no, amazing. No, 'cause we were looking at your LinkedIn. It seems like you've been at Entrepreneur Fest like 8 years. Right?
Yeah,
you've done
nine.
Okay, yeah, and you've done quite an interesting variety of roles. It seems like you started in commercial, you ended up being a program manager, general manager, now partner. How's your time been, and like how's it changed in the last 8 years?
I mean, like obviously, like it's changed a lot. When I joined EF in 2016, we'd run 6 programs ever, I think, and I think we had something like 20 or 30 companies total that had raised money after EF. I think those, both those numbers have like, increased by an order of magnitude at the very least. And like, I think the combined portfolio value was like maybe a couple of $100 million or something, or no, probably not even that. I think there wasn't even a company worth 100 million in the portfolio. Whereas now we've got like had some big breakout successes, and we've internationalized, and the company's got a lot bigger. I think there was probably only 20 something of us when I joined EF. But like the core that has stayed the same is just this like idea that in most places outside of Silicon Valley, it's just like still culturally abnormal for people early on in their careers to start companies. And so you can create new venture funds, and you can create accelerators, and you can be an angel, right? But like that doesn't fundamentally change the culture of those places. And so like here's a little anecdote for you. I did a guest lecture at LSE in January, and it was a 250 person room, and these were all master's students, and it was an entrepreneurship module they'd chosen. Now, I don't necessarily think you should study entrepreneurship, but like this is a self-selecting room of people that were like deeply interested in entrepreneurship. And I asked at the start of this lecture, like, how many of you are thinking about starting a company when you graduate? In the room of 250 people, there were 5 people put their hand up, right? So it's like 2% of the like self-selecting room at one of the best universities in the world, right? And so like the thing that remains a challenge today versus like a decade ago is that you need to change the culture. And the way you shift the culture is by like enabling more people to be successful in doing this very, very early on in their life and careers. And the only way you can do that is by getting more people to start companies than otherwise would, right? Like is by like increasing the size of the pie. So I think that's the thing that stayed the same, but like a bunch has changed over the last 10 years.
And sure. I was just going to ask just on that, is that because they want to build some, some traction in their career before they go and start companies? Because obviously they've taken this entrepreneurship, module because they're interested in starting companies. They want to build that traction, so if they did leave their kind of corporate job or safe job, whatever, they have that to fall back on. Is that why? And
I think that it's partly that. I think it's that people are creatures of mimetic desire, and so what did like the best person on this course do the year before me? Or they went to go work at like a modeling firm, or they went to they went and joined Jane Street or something, and so like that's what I go and do. But I think this point about like, oh, I need to go and get some more experience before I get started is a thing that I do hear a lot, and I always find it curious because I think that like for nearly every skill in life, and I think founding is a skill. Like most, like the kind of general consensus is like, how do you get better at that skill? It's like by doing it. For some reason, people don't believe this about founding, and they think you need to go and get skills doing other things, and that's how you're going to learn about founding. Whereas, like, I think that, of course, with like through EF, we've got a great track record of like helping people build companies very early on in their career, but like not everyone does, and that's also fine, right? Like, I think if loads of people can do EF as their like gateway into founding and learn the skill, even if they don't succeed through like building their first thing with us, but then they build something massive afterwards. Like, for example, like the Superbase founders met at EF in Singapore, right? Like now this is not sadly not a company that we back, but like but hey, like they started their first companies with EF, right? Like that's a great story for me. Like if we could do more of that in the world, like that's an incredibly powerful force. But I think you've got to it's like like how are you going to get better at founding? By founding, not by like going to go and work for someone else for 12 months, right? You'll get good at doing that job, right? Not being a founder.
Yeah, amazing.
100% agree.
Look, Jonny, we're out of time. We're actually over time, but thank you so much for joining us. We've loved chatting. You're welcome back anytime, and we love what EF are doing, and we're following along constantly. So awesome. Thank you for your time. Thanks, Jonny.
Thanks, Jonny, for having me. I've had a great time. Would love to come back.
Yeah,
thanks, guys.